Let's look at a couple of different ways to solve a ratio or proportion question. So our question is, Sophia is having a Zoom party. Woohoo! She invites 4 girls for every 3 boys. If she invites 12 boys, how many girls did she invite? Okay, so there's a couple of methods that we can use to solve this. And we are going to look specifically at 2 different methods. The first method that we're going to look at is a ratio table. And in a ratio table, we are creating a table that we can use to work our way up to the question that we need to answer. Now, whenever we're creating a ratio table, the very first column, very first thing that we do is to label it. Okay, so our first label is girls, because we're comparing girls to boys. So you can put a G for girls if you like, G for girls, and a B for boys. Now we're going to look for some ratios that we need to complete our table. The first ratio that we're given is that for every 4 girls, there are 3 boys. So 4 will go on the top where I have labeled girls, and 3 will go on the bottom where we've labeled boys. And what we're trying to figure out is how many girls there will be if she invites 12 boys. Okay, so we're going to work our way up to 12 boys. To do that, you can add groups of 3 all the way up, or skip count by 3s and skip count by 4 on the top, or you can look at it like multiplication, which is my general preferred method. So if I think of this column as being times 1, I'm going to take this and I'm going to multiply. The second column is going to be times 2. Okay, so I'm going to go from here to here by multiplying times 2. 4 times 2 would be 8, and 3 times 2 would be 6. So I know that if we invited 6 boys, there would be 8 girls. Okay, we might be able to extrapolate or figure out how many boys there are from there, but let's keep going. Next column is going to be times 3. So I go back to my original, and I'm going to multiply the bottom by 3 and the top by 3. Okay. So 3 times 3 is 9, 4 times 3 is 12. So for every 12 girls, there's 9 boys. Still not at 12, so we're going to keep going. Let me focus for us. There we go. This column we're going to multiply by 4. Start with the original. 3 times 4 is 12, and 4 times 4 is 16. And here we've reached the number of boys that we wanted, right? We said that she was going to invite 12 boys. So if there are 12 boys, we know that she had to have invited 16 girls. Okay? Make sure that when you write your answer, you're labeling it also. Okay? Now, we stopped at here because we've answered a question, but if you wanted to, you could complete the table. You'd probably have to multiply by times 5. So 3 times 5 would be 15, 4 times 5 would be 20. Okay? So that's how we do this if we're going to solve using a ratio table. The other way that we can solve a problem like this is going to be by using a proportion. And if you'll recall, a proportion is two ratios that we're setting equal to each other. We set our proportion up by first labeling it, and the labels will go here. And then we have our first ratio, which is going to be equal to the ratio we're trying to figure out. So just to refresh our memory, we started with girls and boys, and our label can be the same as in our ratio table. Girls on the top, boys on the bottom, and we could do this either way, it wouldn't matter, but in this case we're going to stick with girls to boys. Okay? Then we start with the original proportion. We know that we have this, the original ratio. The first ratio we're given is that there are 4 girls for every 3 boys. So we can use this as our first proportion, the first ratio in our proportion. 4 girls for 3 boys. Now we are told that if she invites 12 boys, we need to know how many girls did she figure out. So the girls is information that we don't know yet. Whenever we need a placeholder for information we don't know, we use a variable. So I'm going to put an X here to stand for the fact that that's the information I want to solve later. Okay? So if I'm solving a proportion, there's 2 ways you can do it. First, you can find a pattern. Find a multiplication or division pattern. Okay? So if I look, I know that to get from 3 to 12, what would I have to multiply to get from 3 to 12? 3 times 4 is 12. One of the rules about proportions is if you multiply the bottom by a number, you have to multiply the top by the same value to keep it proportional. So to figure out x, I can multiply the top also times 4. So I know that 4 times 4 will be equal to x. That means that x has to be equal to 16. So again, we got 16 girls when we are using our ratio table or our proportion. All right, there's one other way that you can solve a proportion, and that is by using the butterfly method or by using cross multiplication. Same thing. So we have the same ratio as before, but we're going to solve using a little bit different math. The good thing about cross multiply is that it works for any values. So sometimes it can be really hard to find a pattern from one to the other, especially if you're working with fractions or decimals. So if you're having difficulty finding a pattern, you might want to try using cross multiplication or the butterfly method. So to do this method, we start by multiplying diagonally, which is where the word cross multiplication comes in. We multiply across diagonally. We start with whatever the 2 are that are numbers. So I have 2 numbers, 4 and 12. 4 times 12 is 48. Okay, now I'm going to look at my other across values. And if I'm going across here, I notice that I have a 3 and an x. So I've multiplied by 4 times 12, and your next step is always to divide by whatever value is across from 3. So multiply the numbers, divide by the value across from 3. So I'm going to divide by 3. And 48 divided by 3 is, you guessed it, 16. So having solved this, I can say that x is 16, or there were 16 girls. So this gives you multiple different methods to solve. Ratio table, a proportion using a pattern, or a proportion using cross multiplication or butterfly multiplication. We're going to be learning about one more method today. Thanks.